Hey everybody, Dan here from Sci-Fi Models and Stuff, and I'm really glad to be back in the very messy studio here. Today I'm going to be showing you my latest build. It's the 1/12 scale Allosaurus skeleton from Desert Dinosaurs. This is a really awesome kit. It looks like a great showpiece when it's done, but it was a lot of work. There were a lot of trials and tribulations when putting it together, and we'll touch on that a little bit in the video. Now, because this build was so difficult, this is a very long video. Now you have to remember, I took almost 30 to 40 hours of footage and edited it down to this 25 minutes or so. And this is really only going to be the first part where we cover construction. In the next video, we'll talk about painting and all the finishing steps that we took. So if that's something that interests you, check that out instead. If this is the kind of video that you like, please let me know. I don't normally like to do videos this long because it's really kind of hard to hold people's attention for over 20 minutes on something simple like this. So if you do like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know too. And as always, feel free to subscribe. We have lots of content incoming. As you can see behind me, I've got about 5 or 6 projects in the works right now. Hopefully all be ending soon. All right, let's get right to it. Now when you first open the box, you get a lot of bags of parts. You get a bundle of wires that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And the only other thing you get in there is this single sheet of paper. Now I was able to find out a little bit later that there were instructions online, but for the first couple weeks or so working on this kit, this image was the only thing I had to use. Now you'll notice here that there are over 148 pieces here, just about 150 pieces. Now can you imagine putting together an airplane or a tank or any other model with 150 pieces and no instructions? I wanted to start with the skull. It's the most recognizable part of the build, and really it just needs a little bit of cleanup. So here we have all the vertebrae, and it says cervical and dorsal, and I believe, I could be wrong, I think that just means the neck and the back. So let's take a look here. There's 21 different vertebrae. They go all the way from the hips to the base of the skull. And you see that they're all kind of connected and nicely numbered, which is great. Because there's 21 of them. All of them are going to require a little bit of cleanup. There's a little bit of a seam line on each one, and then some all the extra flash. But really, look really great, especially compared to the last skeleton I did. You'll also notice all of them have a little pilot hole for wiring, so it really shouldn't be that bad at all. The hips are designed in 3 pieces. You have the hips themselves, I think might be called the scapula. I'm not 100% sure. And then this section of the spine. Kind of interesting. You'll notice on the inside of these there's some cutoffs that actually fit in to the vertebrae. There's not a lot of contact area there, so I suspect this is going to be a little bit difficult to glue. Oh my god, the tail. There is a lot going on here. So to my understanding, this kit used to be made with a 2 or 3 piece tail. It was basically all the connected vertebrae and ribs and such, and you would just kind of stick it on the end here. And they've changed that. So now there are, gosh, it looks like about 9 vertebrae. And plus a lot more here. I don't know if these are technically vertebrae or not. And then some sort of protrusion that I believe is glued to the bottom of each vertebrae. We can look at some reference images, but there's a whole lot of them. There is about, I don't know, 30 or so. Needless to say, this is all going to take a lot of work and a lot of research before we're ready for the tail. So looking at the legs here, everything seems to be pretty standard. There's some kind of femur and some kind of other leg bone. I think they actually go together like that. I have a little experience for my Allosaurus kit. But what's really cool are these. and that's the toe bones. And you can see each toe bone has been cast individually, so you can really pose them. I'm a little nervous about that, but it's really cool. Opens up a lot of possibilities. For the arms, we got these shoulder pieces, and then some other kind of arm piece, I'm not really sure. And again, we have I guess fingers and claws that can be articulated. Really cool. And then lastly, we got the ribs. We got a ton of those. We got the regular ribs that go down the spine. And then we also have these, which are I think they're called ventricle ribs. They go up the neck. This is a lot nicer than that T-Rex kit I did, so glad to see them. Each of the vertebrae need a little bit of cleanup. Most everything can be scraped off with an X-Acto knife, but I do need to add a little bit of putty too. The kit makers were nice enough to include a little bundle of wires, and I'm not really sure what all of them are for. There's some really thin ones that might be for the tail. There's a very thick stainless rod that I suspect is the main support rod. And in there is this rod. And looking at the shape, I believe that this is for the neck, or I should say the spine, up through the neck into the head. I'm not 100% sure, but considering that none of these other ones have a real defined curve like that, I think that's what it's for. So my next step is to drill holes through all these vertebrae and string them along this wire. Again, the folks were considerate enough to have pilot holes in every piece, so should be pretty easy. Okay, so everything fits together really pretty well. There's a few areas of concern here. Right there, there's a little bit of a gap. Right here, things get a little messed up. But overall, it's much nicer than the other skeleton kit I worked on. And of course, there's one more piece here that will attach to the head. But yeah, I really like having this pre-curved piece of rod, and yeah. So then we'll drill a hole here, and that should fit right in there like that. And let's see what else. Skull will go something like that, and we're making really good progress. Okay, I'm gonna try something that I've never actually seen or tried before. It's something I've heard of, but never seen it before. So I have bought some very tiny screws and some very tiny nuts. And what I'm going to do is install the nut in such a way that when I tighten this screw down into it, press up against that rod there and hold it steady. And it should hold it so it won't come out at all. So yeah, very difficult. And then anyways, the intended purpose is that if I ever need to move it, I should be able to untighten that screw, take the neck off, and go. And then when I put it back on, tighten the screw back up and it'll hold. No idea if it'll work, but luckily that's in a fairly inconspicuous place that if it doesn't work, I can cover it up with putty or try again. Now I do have to say that after all that, this method actually didn't work. So this was a complete failure. Eventually later in the build, I was able to install a set screw using a little bit of a different method, but I'm not going to go into that here. So in addition to just having a lot of vertebrae parts for the tail, the problem is that nothing is marked. So, I mean, here you can kind of get a pretty good idea. These seem to be all in a row, and jury's out on those, but I'm sure they are as well. Same here. These seem to go somewhere in the middle. So maybe I can mark some of these off and help to keep myself sane here. Okay, so both hip pieces dried overnight. Seems pretty solid. A little bit of a misalignment here, so what I'm going to try to do is heat this up with a hairdryer and kind of bend things into place. Hairdryer is sometimes warm enough to work. I may have to do the boiling water method. Okay, so we're going to be moving on to the leg, and we're going to start with the right leg. So here's the femur, and here is, I don't know, the next part of the leg. Now I'm using a reference image for a skeleton, and I know that I need to have a bend somewhere like that. Now on the real animal, there would be some muscle and some kind of ligatures or something holding the leg together there, but we don't have that luxury. So we're going to be using wire. I'm going to drill a hole here, hole there, have some wire attached like that, and that should give me enough flexibility to bend where I want it. Okay, so I got my wire glued in there, and just test fit it here. Then we can bend it where we need to. I think that should be good. Good thing about this is it is adjustable, not only for fine-tuning this build, but in case I ever want to change the pose. Since the leg really doesn't hold any weight and doesn't hold the skeleton up in this kit, that makes it really easy too. So I just use about a 1/2 inch of wire in between there. Okay, so those of you who may have been paying attention might have realized that I actually put the wrong leg bones together. So what I thought this was the right femur. It's actually the left femur. However, this is the right, I suppose, tibia or something like that. So the good news is the glue is still very fresh on that. I'm able to just pop it right out of place. I'm gonna make sure everything is on the right leg, and then I'll put it back together. Okay, still got to attach this little side bone here, but that is looking much more natural. It looks like a much better fit, so my bad. Again, we'll kind of bend it, something like that. And there we go. Well, I hate to have done this, but I did not assemble the skull on camera. I really needed 3 hands, and I barely got it together. It was very difficult. This bottom jaw is 2 pieces. It connects there at the front with no joint. And it's actually connected here by 2 small brass wires. What's nice about that is it does give it a degree of posability. And if you really force it, it'll go a little bit more. So that's gonna help us out in the future. Looks good though. I'm really happy with it. Okay, looks like mounting the skull should be pretty easy. I drilled a little bit of wire there and a little bit there in that first vertebrae. It's gonna fit just like that and give us enough room that we can bend it if necessary. So I'm going to glue that in, I suppose, and move on from there. So at this point, we made a really big discovery. There's actually instructions available for this kit online. Now, the instructions are incomplete. You have to take some of the steps from the Allosaurus build, some of them from the T-Rex build. You have to pick and choose what you need, combine, and then you have enough instructions for the whole build. Combined with a lot of resource and reference pictures, you can get a pretty decent build out of this, but it is somewhat complicated. These instructions did give me better ideas though on how to connect the vertebrae, how to connect the support rods, and even how to add the set screws. Okay, one quick note. The instructions actually said to drill the mounting hole or the mounting rod at the end of that vertebrae. And that actually acts more of a balancing point for the whole skeleton as opposed to the hole that I had mounted there in the pelvis. So I will be plugging that up. You'll notice I plugged up that set screw hole, and that allows it to stand a little firmer, kind of set back a little bit. It looks pretty nice. And just a really quick note here. First off, apologize for the lighting. After the failure of that last set screw, I actually filled in the hole, let that dry for about a week really as I was doing other things. And then I re-tapped the hole, or actually I just tapped the hole like you would tap a hole in metal or anything else. And surprisingly, so far, the threads are holding really, really well. So, and let me stop here and just briefly apologize for this camera angle. Tighten this set screw down, and we should be in business. So, I just like to learn things. Now, originally I took about an hour or two's worth of video just on how to attach a set screw and how that helps the sculpture come together. Unfortunately, I did cut a lot of that because I don't think it's of interest to a lot of builders. But in the future, I might include that as a separate video. Okay, after going back and forth with the kit sculptor, I think I was able to figure everything out. So, I'm going to be using this wire to wire the tail. This is about 1/16 in diameter, so I am going to drill a little bit higher in a number of these. Now to start off, I'm going to be drilling a 1/16 hole in this one. This is the first vertebrae that attaches. It's going to be 1/16 so that the 1/16 wire fits very snugly. And on the other side over here, I'll attach a slightly thicker wire to attach everything to the body. Okay, when I heard back from the manufacturer, I was also able to get some guidance on the parts of the tail. So right here we have the first 15 tail, vertebrae strung up, very similar to the neck. So this one is glued in place and the rest are just kind of resting against that. On this section, there are 4 more to go for a total of 19 bones. And then there's an additional a lot, probably almost 20 more. So a little overwhelming when we get to that part. We're actually going to put in a different wire and I'll show you when we get there. Okay, so just like the spine, this piece is also glued on. Basically the hole drilled only goes to about halfway in and it stays there. So. Okay, so despite finishing a lot of the ribs last night, we still have 22 more to go. Sorry, the tail. So these are not labeled at all, and they all look very similar. But like I said, I was able to get in touch with the manufacturer, who basically set me straight on the order here. And it's a little bit confusing, so I actually have a picture of it on my phone that I can reference at any time. It goes that one, that one, that one, that one. Kind of a crosshatch across. Very odd and confusing. And I believe it goes back away the other way. Very strange way of doing this. But I am glad to have it figured out. So basically it's going to work the same way. Now these are a lot smaller. This one is about a ½ inch wide. When we get to the end here, I would say it's more like a ½ inch long. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. The cross section is very small, so I'm a little bit worried about drilling into that and getting a wire set. So that being said, I think I am going to start at the end and get a wire nice and securely snug in there and kind of build it up from there. So, alright, I'm going to get started on that and we'll see you back in just a minute. Okay, so here we go, about 30 pieces of tail. I'm really pretty happy with the way it came out. It's very flexible, it's moving, and it locks up really nicely into the body. So the last thing we need to do on the tail is attach another piece of bone to each vertebrae. I believe it's called the chevron. Basically, it just kind of hangs out down there and, is the bottom bone of the tail vertebrae. There are about 20 of these or so. So let's get started. It was around this point where I realized that things weren't looking quite right. And after going back through my reference images and counting some of the chevrons, I noticed that I was actually missing about 7 of them. I emailed the company about missing parts, and unfortunately by that time they had had enough of my questions and were no longer responding. Luckily for me, I do have access to a 3D printer, and I was able to find some comparable bones from a similar sized dinosaur, resize them to my needs, and print them off. Now this video is not intended to be critical of the manufacturers. In fact, I think I've done a pretty good job of saying how good their sculpt is compared to other products on the market. But ultimately, I was a little disappointed by them. Between the instructions issues and the missing parts, by the end, I got the sense that they didn't want to deal with me anymore. And a lot of these issues could have been avoided right from the start. But I'm actually interested in buying more kits from this company. Their sculpts are awesome, and they're better than any of their competitors. I hope that in the future they can get a little better about some of these issues, but the fact remains they're still the best dinosaur skeleton producer out there that I know of. Okay, so not sure that looks much better, but definitely here it is. For the next part of the upper ribs, we need to install what are called the cervical ribs. So those are the ribs that fit on the first 9 vertebrae, kind of sweeping downwards before they get to the real ribs. These are look really pretty simple to put on. Just a little dab of glue, and doesn't appear to be a real good connector there, but it also doesn't appear to really need one. So we're just gluing them on as we can. Using just a tiny bit of accelerator. Here's the first one done. Here I've got all the cervical ribs on both sides installed. It was really pretty easy. And we're moving down to the regular ribs. These attach by small nibs on each piece, and they go down the length of the vertebrae. Here I have all the ribs on one side attached. I do this one side at a time to see if I need any major adjustments. You can see a few of the pieces need some readjustment and reshaping, so I use a little bit of heat from a hairdryer to reshape them. Okay, so I got both sides done. I reshaped a lot of them. Looking at the camera now, it looks like I need to reshape that one as well. But overall, went pretty well. So, yeah. Okay, moving on a little bit to the feet. I was able to finally determine how these bones line up. And they, you know, kind of fit together with a little imagination. So anyways, this is going to be the right foot. So we'll start by gluing that together. Okay, so once that is set up and we've done a little trimming and stuff, we can drill the attachment hole in the back here. I'm just doing that with the hand drill again, and a 1/16 inch bit. Okay, so finally working on the toes. So the first toe has only 2 joints, and we were able to kind of connect it with a wire similar to what we did on the jaw, and that gives it a little bit of flexibility. And then that fits right here on the foot. Looked at some reference images to get the pose right, and it'll be something like that. Now, some of the main toes are a little bit harder to work out the angles and stuff, but looking at some reference pictures, I think I got it. The good thing about this is you can adjust it quite a bit. And that'll go something like that. Sorry. Okay, so I've finished all the toes on this foot. I think it looks really awesome, and now I just need to pose them for being in motion. It's going to be a little bit harder than I would think. The arms are fairly simple. It's about 5 pieces that connect. Got a main shoulder here and a few other arm pieces. Claws and fingers will go right there. And here we have each of the claws / fingers. This was much easier than doing the toes, but you'll see some of these are much smaller. All 4 of those are a little bit smaller than my thumb there. So we're ready to attach them. And we have all 3 fingers attached here. So these are slightly posable. So before we attach this arm assembly, make sure that I've got these where I want them. Pretty cool. As one of the last steps, I'm starting to reshape all the bones of the piece here. I want to make sure that the sculpture looks lifelike, so I add a lot of curves to both sides. I also use this time to make sure that the legs are at appropriate angles and the toes are connecting with the surface. Lastly here, I'm looking at the sculpture from all angles to make sure that everything looks natural. Okay, so we finally reached the end of part 1. We just got finished posing the final sculpture. In part 2, we're going to talk about texturing the bones and painting and finishing this piece. So we'll see you there soon. If you have any feedback on this video, I'm more than happy to take it. I love hearing from you guys. Really, any comments on these videos are why I keep doing this. And that's all we have for now. I'm in the process of editing the second part of this video, so hope to see you there. If you like this, as always, please consider subscribing. I'd love to see it. All right, we'll see you next time.